Hey Daniela, how's it going? Yeah, I see your note. Thanks for the info. But yeah, this is looking good. I understand the problem with like translating the thing and going back a version and losing work, which is never good. But you can always remake it. All right, so let's take a look at where we're at and what we have going on. And I'm sure some of these comments will speak to what you are discussing. I'm gonna limit it to this, just like one full cycle, and I'm gonna call out your keyframes here, do little pose suggestions. Oh yeah, the other thing is like, I don't want you to think of like mistakes, right? Like you say in your thing, like, oh, I see the mistakes I've made. And I don't know. They're not mistakes. You're just learning through the process. So it's fine. It's just part of the process. All right. So I don't want you to be too hard on yourself. So here we go. I would say here, maybe your foot is contacting the ground. Maybe tip it up just a little bit. It's a small thing. Maybe you can bring your pelvis down a little bit. But in general, I like this straight leg. I like this little bend in the leg. I know that's probably a note I've given you. So great job on that. It's looking really good. Here, I think you can probably afford a little bit further down on your pelvis here. And I know that this is like because what it's going to show is like here the character's weight is coming down, right? Due to the nature of the triangle is like this. And during the passing pose, this length here remains kind of unchanged, but it's like fully straight up. Hopefully this will make sense. So this is the pelvis, this is that triangle I'm always talking about. And here it goes up higher. So I understand the desire to make it go up higher here, but I think here you can have the character still kind of like catching their weight. That's kind of like an overlap follow-through concept maybe, where it's just slightly lower here than it was in this pose. So maybe even just a tiny bit lower. And that'll give you a little bit bend in this leg, which I think is also missing. I think that would be good. So I would just bring down your center of gravity just a little bit to have this be like the pose where the character is catching and absorbing like their full weight. And then this being up tall is great. This pose looks great. I really like it. It seems really clean. But between this pose here and this pose here, we lose a lot of height, like maybe that much, which is, it should be going down. I think conceptually that's correct, but then between that last pose and this pose, there's no loss of height. So I think I would bring this pose up, maybe to bias it more towards the upside of these two extremes than the downside. And I think you're going to get some better spacing on your center of gravity here. And that center of gravity, again, is like the big control that surrounds the whole thing, not specifically the pelvis control. And then here, this pose is looking like this foot here. I want to see that heel on the ground and the foot tipped up a little bit more. And maybe that's what happened when you said, you know, that you had some issues with it being lifted too far up off the ground. Maybe this is where you were kind of seeing that. And one of the ways you can get this blue leg to feel like it's a little bit longer is to tip the pelvis to show that the weight is like still on this leg. You know what I'm trying to say? Hopefully you know what I'm trying to say. And then here, you know, like you have this like forward lean on the front torso here, but when it jumps to the next the next phrase, it seems like the torso is like rotating back. And this doesn't look like a bad torso position to me, but just the change strikes me as a little odd. So maybe maybe just try to make it a little more consistent. Like here you have this and then it jumps to this. So maybe this one, the torso needs to just be the same. And so you have like these two control curves here and here controlling that torso. Maybe those just need to be more similar to the, on this frame, to the pose that precedes it and follows it. That's just a little something that caught my eye. And you can see it if you watch the head, it kind of like juts forward there. And then it comes back, you know what I mean? In space, when I say it juts forward, it like moves forward in space. And I think that's coming from that pose. But anyways, I should stay focused on the legs. Yep. All right, cool. Yeah, like the spacing on your arms and stuff feels even a little bit. So that's something to take a look at once you start moving into, you know, your breakdowns. And I'm doing this pretty coarsely. Okay. So let's turn on ghosting to see if I can make sense of all this. Yeah, it just looks like a little even. So maybe on this pose, I would bias the arm like a little bit more up towards the top. And then here, maybe you have to bias this a little bit more forward still. Not sure, but something just to keep an eye on as you go into creating more poses. So right now, this is on 4s. I would correct. This is what I would hope to see. I'm not sure if you're going to have enough time for this throughout your week, but if you can hit those notes, the drawovers that I just gave, and try to get those key poses like kind of nailed down, and then go in and start working your like in-between poses on the in-between frames. So instead of just 8 poses, we'll be at 16 poses, and then we can take a look. You know what I mean? Yeah, but before you go into doing those breakdowns, like make sure like, so from the front view, like here, when the weight gets like fully on this leg, I feel like it should be coming over this way just a little sooner. Like you do have it come over here, like that looks really nice, but it's not coming over at all between these two poses, right? And then it goes over. So I would start the motion over on this frame, you know, start in betweening that side to side in these step breakdowns. And here it like goes back kind of quickly. So here, if this is where your edge is, I would keep the edge there, or maybe it's starting to come over a little bit, or it could even be a little bit still heading this way. It's up to you to decide. Like any of those things would be valid. And then when this foot plants, that's when it comes over there. Because when I watch it at speed, you know, it seems to kind of like click over and click back and click over and click back. Hopefully that all makes sense. If it doesn't, just email me for office hours. I'm happy to meet with you and talk through some of the stuff in more detail. But hopefully that all seems clear and that you have a path forward. So try to address notes on the fundamental 8 poses. Get those looking really solid. Get everything like you like. And then if hopefully you can have time to get the full 16 poses in there, the breakdowns. And don't just try to put in like the 50% computer breakdowns. Like try to think about your arcs and your timing and really design those breakdowns. being biased more one direction than the other. But anyways, great stuff. I like to see this coming along. I think you're in a good place. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week. All right.